Oh, sorry, we gotta do the intro. I don't know why I'm on T-Mobile Tuesday.
Yeah,
and it's Saturday.
Oh, but the T-Mobile thing this week was for IHOP Pan Coins, and I have 22, so we should go.
Whoa, okay, we should.
Because we could both get kids' meals for free.
Wow.
I have to give a PSA that when you go to IHOP...
Oh, are we recording?
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, why are you telling me this? Okay.
When you go to IHOP, you should get kids' meals because that's the only reason to go. I don't like pancakes, but when they have funny faces and chocolate, they're tolerable. I've only been to IHOP like twice in my adult life. The other time, I at least went once when I was a kid because we went with our grandpa. We went to go see, we bought a zoo, and then it was like 11:30 at night, and I feel like we were driving around for like an hour, but IHOP is right next to the movie theater, so we couldn't have been driving around for that long. But we couldn't find anywhere that was open to eat, so we went to IHOP.
We should have eaten dinner before the movie if it ended at 11:30. I can't imagine it started.
Well, it was probably like 8. But in my head, it was 11:30, and we were driving around for an hour, starving to death.
I'm sure. I don't remember that at all, but I have the memory of a 90-year-old.
It's on my bucket list to get a funny face, or not a funny face, a scary face pancake at IHOP. Our bucket list has some pretty exciting things on it.
Yeah, because we have a shared bucket list, but not like because we're twins and we have to do everything together. We have a bucket list of things we want to do together, and then we have our own bucket list too because we're also our own people. I just have to clarify that because I've heard a lot of things lately that I feel like are a little bit twinacist. Twinacist is the word that our friends who are also twins came up with for when people are discriminatory against twins. Like, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts the other day. I'm not going to call them out, but everyone probably knows what it is because I always talk about it. It was an old episode, but they were talking about how twins are both half of a person, and then together they have a full personality, but they don't individually have their own personalities. And it made me really sad because, like, I know it's stupid, but also twins are full individual, complete people just like everyone else. They just happen to have somebody who looks a lot like them. And somebody else said something mean about twins, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, we should do a podcast episode about twinacism because
yeah, we should.
It's a long story, but we had a very twinacist experience a few weeks ago that made me incredibly crabby. I also am writing a play for my playwriting class about twins, and for our prompt yesterday, I was reading Bible verses about twins. There's only 3, but one was a little,
Twinacist?
It was a little interesting.
What did it say?
It was long. I'll read it on our twinacist episode.
Okay, but tell me which one it is later so I can look it up.
I will, but don't worry for our family who listens. I'm not dissing the Bible. I'm just saying it was an interesting verse, but just wait until that episode. And then Okay, anyway, this isn't what our episode is about. It's a Twinspiration episode.
Yeah, so we should stop complaining.
Yeah, I made a couple notes of some context that we have to give, which we have time for because our Good News Minute for the day is just an audio that we're going to play.
Oh, yeah, I found it, which is fun because I don't usually find them. Aspen usually finds them.
Well, she sent it to me because she always sends me Instagram reels, and I was like, oh, this would be perfect.
Yeah, it is so perfect for this guest, and it is so cute. It'll make your ovaries cry.
Okay, do you want to introduce it?
Our Good News Minute for this week is Master Caleb Stewart, the world's youngest motivational speaker on the benefits of reading. He loves to read, and he was giving this speech to teachers about reading, and I'm just going to let him tell it to you.
He's 4 years old, by the way.
Yes, I meant to say that. He's 4 years old, and this is so cute, so please listen.
Thank you for having me. I am here to speak to you about the importance and benefits of reading. I personally read every day and absolutely love the adventure of reading. I will stand before you and speak with confidence and not be afraid. Reading every day has made me smarter. Reading has also strengthened my vocabulary and language skills, allowing me to pronounce new and big words without even thinking about it.
Okay, we're back.
We're back. Didn't you love that?
And that is a perfect segue into our guest for today, because our guest is, well, her name is Rachel Barbe, but we know her as Miss Barbe because she was our senior year English teacher.
And our advisor for our favorite club in high school.
Yes, we were super excited to have her on because she posted on Facebook like 6 months ago maybe that she did a TED Talk about how book clubs can save the world. And when we were in her class, we had to do this whole, got to do this whole TED Talk unit. We were supposed to do TED Talks, but then not real ones, just like in the class, but then COVID happened. So we did them on Zoom. And to be honest, I have absolutely no recollection of this. I remember a lot of the stuff we did in her class, but I could not tell you what my TED Talk was about or anything that I did for it. But I do remember the unit, and I remember her teaching about how to do a TED Talk.
Yeah, I remember the unit, but I was trying to find mine the other day, but I can't. I can't for the life of me remember what mine was about.
I know.
I desperately want to know.
But anyway, she had this really inspirational TED Talk, very honest and I think important about why book clubs and reading is so important. And I think that we never talk about the importance of reading as adults. And like even the library does the summer reading things. And for adults, you can count reading Facebook posts and stuff as reading. And I think that is kind of, I'm not really okay with that. So she came on to talk about her TED Talk and also her experience being a teacher and just why literature is so important. And it was really fun to get to catch up with her because we haven't talked to her face to face in a long time. So I think you guys will really enjoy her. Just a couple things that we wanted to give context on before we play the interview so that you know what we're talking about. She mentions that she did the TED Talk at Warren Tech, which is I don't even know what you call it. It's like a satellite school at the district that we went to where kids could go and study specific things. So like you could...
It's kind of like a trade school, but like for high schoolers.
Yeah, so you could go instead of electives in a couple of your core classes, you would go and then you would study, like people could get their EMT licenses and stuff, which I was going to do, but you had to be 18 to actually get the license, and I was going to be 16 when I graduated. And also I wanted to take choir, so didn't do that. Anyway, I digress. She also refers to the class that we were in with her as comp, which was like senior composition or
like English language and composition.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I was going to say is that Ashley talks about the book club that we were in 6th grade and how we read all of these amazing books. And I just wanted to say that we didn't really actually ever read in that book club. We just talked a lot. And we read like picture books every once in a while.
No, we read a couple chapter books that were really good.
I think we might have read 1 or 2, but 99% of it was just us goofing off with the librarian, who was the most amazing person ever.
But we did talk a lot about books, and it was still a really great experience. But I didn't want to tell her what we were talking about book clubs that are in our book club. We didn't read that many books. But we did read some, and I really enjoyed them, and I still remember some of them. I was just thinking about one the other day because it kind of has to do with your play that you're writing. That one about that society where like people had 2 souls in their body and they would like switch which one was
it was like it wasn't the goodies and the baddies, but it was something like there was 2 different books.
Yeah.
And it was like the out. No.
It was something. I'll figure
Pretties
out what
and Uglies? Was it Pretties and Uglies?
No, that it was a book we read, but it was different. I just wanted to say to people, especially adults who are listening, but also kids, that reading for pleasure is just really important and really fun, and you should just do it, because I haven't read a lot of things since middle school that weren't for school because I've had so much to read for school, which is great, and I enjoy some of the things I've read for school, but lately I've started reading books just like from the library or like listening to audiobooks, and I love it so much. Like, it's not really even good for me because I'll get into a book and then I don't do anything else until I finish, but you just forget how much fun reading is, and I think that everyone should listen to this podcast and then go to your local library and pick up a book.
I love finding a book where you just can't put it down.
Yeah.
It's a million times better than having a show that you just can't wait to find out what happens. I mean, trust me, I love watching TV. I never do it, but I do love like finding a really good, riveting show, but it is nothing like finding a really good book. And if you have any good book recommendations, I especially love memoirs, so put them below. Okay, that was a really long intro.
Yeah, sorry.
But enjoy Miss Barbe.
Enjoy Rachel Barbe.
I'm on my phone instead of my Chromebook because my browser was out of date. Whatever. Riverside's fancy.
Yes, it is.
So I
Clearly
cyberstalked
it's too
you.
fancy for us.
No.
Oh, you cyberstalked us?
You're fancy, that's why I say you're fancy, because I was looking, I'm like, how long have they been doing this podcast business? And it's been, what, like a year?
Yeah, it'll be a year on, our first episode came out on February 1st, so, almost a year.
That's crazy. What prompted that?
So we both unintentionally took the same semester off last year, and
We were bored.
yeah, we were like, we need stuff that's fulfilling to do. So Ashley was like, hey, we should start a podcast, but I don't want to edit anything, so we can do it as long as you edit it all.
That is not how it happened.
How did you accidentally take the same semester off?
Well, we were both having like different health issues, so I knew I was taking the semester off.
And I was not going to because I didn't want to take the same semester off as her because that would be weird. But then I came back to school and then I was here for like a week and I was like, I'm not going to make it through this semester. So then I was like, I guess I'm going to have to take it off and go live at home with Aspen again.
Yeah.
So when you took the semester off, were you back in Colorado or did you stay in LA?
No, we went back to Colorado.
Fair enough.
It was hard to come back though because LA is not the same as Colorado. I was always like, I can't wait to get out of Colorado. I've just exhausted everything that's here for me, and now I'm in LA and I'm like, I want to go back to the mountains. I don't like the beach, I'm learning.
Yes, it's dirtier than the mountains, I think. Well, that's cool. Thanks for watching my TED Talk and thinking it was cool.
It was awesome. Yeah.
So confession, I haven't actually watched it yet.
Oh, you haven't?
No. It's that perennial problem. Maybe you actresses don't have this problem, but I don't like to see myself on camera because in my head it was perfect. And then, well, okay, it wasn't. I keep telling people when they're like, you haven't watched it? And I said, well, I was there. I know what I said.
That's a good point. No, we definitely don't like to see ourselves on camera. We have a premiere of a show that we were in after this, and I'm dreading it because I do not want to see it.
Yeah.
And we filmed it before COVID, so it was like a long time ago, so that's going to be extra embarrassing.
Awkward.
But I think your TED Talk was pretty perfect, so I think you will be okay to watch it.
Yeah.
Well, there were definitely some mistakes live. I want to watch it so I can see how they edited out the mistakes that happened live. So, yeah, and I will be watching it. Like, I'll show it to my classes, but that might be the first time. So we'll see.
So tell us how you got the inspiration to do the TED Talk and what was it like preparing for that?
So it was humbling. You're hearing part of that with my not wanting to watch it and what I thought in my head versus what it actually was like. So I had done the research for what makes a good TED Talk a good TED Talk. So I could tell students about it. And when the opportunity came to actually do one, I was like, I really should do this. So I'm not just a poser. I was fine with that and excited about that. So I knew how to put it together. I knew like, okay, 3 is the magic number. You want 3 sections. I think I'm trying to remember who the lady is that Ted recommends that talks about the alternating between what is and what could be. And that idea of a TED Talk where it goes back and forth between the present and the goal. So those things were all part of my process. And then when I first started saying it out loud, I was on the way home from work and I was calling my mom and I'm like, Mom, I just need you to listen. I got 27 minutes. I just need to practice this and say it out loud. And I haven't yet. And I need an audience because when I'm by myself, I'm just going to stop. So the first time I did it, it felt okay, but it felt kind of loose. It didn't feel like it was tightened up. And here I am driving along C470 trying to get home. And at the end, I did a little bit of pausing and talking to myself and saying, Mom, what about this? And what about this? And I don't even remember what she said until the end when she asked questions about things that I thought I had said, like things I thought were clear. She said, explain that idea to me some more. And I was like, well, shoot, if you didn't catch it, then I have some cleaning up to do. that's when I really went back in and I did more writing. So I had an outline, I had my research, and I had general like outline stuff. But after that, I went back in and I really wrote almost word for word what I wanted to say, which I didn't think I was going to have to do. I thought I was going to be able to wing it because I knew the material so well, but I really ended up almost memorizing it word for word. And then when the day came, there were, I don't know, 8 or 12 speakers at the TED Talk event, which was kind of cool because it was at Warren Tech. There's a new Warren Tech South campus, which is really meant for publication stuff. So they have a lot of really cool resources, and it was student run. And part of me is thinking, oh, I roll, like here's an 18-year-old that is doing this TED Talk. So I was pretty confident I was getting in. I'm like, of course I'm going to get in. Like it's up the street from, Warren Tech, just in Jeffco. And I found out later, I had one student that also made it in, which was cool. There were only 2 of my students who tried, and one also got in with me. So there were 2 of us from Chatfield. I was confident. Like I wasn't worried. I had practice and practice and practice. I had it almost memorized. We had no slides the way that it was set up. I had no notes. It was just me and my brain and my body on the stage. And I was fine until I walked out. until I walked out onto the stage, and I'd seen it before, but it wasn't the real thing, and we didn't rehearse. We had the opportunity to, but I was like, I got it. And then I see this dark crowd. I could see maybe like 6 or 7 people, and there were probably 50 or so in the audience. And some of them were my students, because I'm like, I will give you extra credit if you show up. Just come be my rah-rah crowd. And I could see like 3 or 4 of them, and the rest of it was just kind of like dark. As the auditorium got further back, the less I could see. And I was like, oh, my nervousness just kicked in. So, and then I forgot stuff. I had it down. And I forgot stuff. So there were several steps where I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I can do this. And then multiple times I got a reality check of, oh, that didn't go like you thought it would, which was fine on the phone call to my mom, but a little less fine when I was on stage. I was a little bit embarrassed and frustrated in my head. The information came out. It was communicated, and what I wanted to say, I said. I just didn't always say it the way I wanted to, which I probably need to watch it and just be like, it's fine. It turned out fine.
Well, first of all, I love that you called your mom first to ask her to listen to it, because that's totally what I would do. So did your parents have a big influence on your love of reading as a kid?
Definitely. So I can't remember my mom ever not reading to us. My dad isn't a fiction reader. He isn't even like a book reader, but he will read a newspaper cover to cover multiple times a week. So he's informed, but he's not really like a sit down with a book kind of guy. But my mom is like, she reads voraciously even now. But after she stopped reading to us when my sister and I, when we were little, just because life, I would take books that she'd finished. So like in upper elementary and middle school, she'd finish a book and I would take it. They weren't kids' books necessarily. And she and I were on a kick of World War II historical fiction. So I don't know how many World War II novels that she and I read one after another, like a lot. So to this point, like I don't like reading those anymore, because I've read so many. Everyone talks about, the newest World War II nonfiction. I'm like, it better be really, really good. So I would take books after my mom, and then as adults, we've swapped. Like she'll be like, give me some books. So that came full circle, and I'm like, well, I got some books. On any given day, either of us is sitting in a room reading a book. So that's definitely something that my mom showed me, and then I obviously took on myself. She's not an English teacher, but so I don't know, exponentially took that and ran with it.
So since you do the TED Talk unit in your classes, did you always have the idea that if you would actually do a TED Talk, this is what you would do it about? Or how did you come up with the idea to do it about book clubs?
No, so you guys were the first year. And then COVID happened and you ended up doing it on Zoom, which was awful. And
I remember that.
It was, and we did the best we could, and it was fine, and everybody got through, and some people recorded in advance and played, and some people did it live. But I had a model that I was building off of that had to do with things that we have earned versus what we deserve. And I get really frustrated with entitlement and how people are like, I deserve all the good things. Well, why you? Like, maybe not. So my first TED Talk was about that. And it never evolved past planning and like model planning. So I made, here's how I would build a TED Talk based on, these texts and what TED recommends and these books that I've read. So that was all really planning for the classroom, not really planning for an actual TED Talk. So when the opportunity to actually do it came around, it looked different because I knew there would for sure be an end point where I was on a stage being recorded by TED, not my cool grants purchased equipment at Chatfield. So, which is good stuff, really, but it's not, it's not on TEDx YouTube channel. This book club talk came about because and I said this in the TED Talk, but I read an article 2 summers ago, I think, on LitHub, and it just came across my feed on my phone, and it was a paper published in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, whatever that is. And the paper literally just says people who read novels, fiction, have a more complex worldview. They don't see things just like, here's one way and here's the other way. Because that's not true. The world is not 2 choices. That really intrigued me largely because after COVID, even before COVID, the world felt really divisive. Like, hey, we're either conservatives or liberals. We either hate Trump or love Trump. We either want to ban books or we don't. Like, it's all these binary choices. That's not really how it is. So that really resonated with me. And to be totally honest, it was less personal. The deserve entitlement business was almost too personal of a topic for me to use in my class as an example. So the one about book clubs, which while I still really believe in, it much more professionally sound. And then I was able to blend that complexity idea with past experience in college and in my own pedagogical research too. That agency piece at the end of the TED Talk is really the newest part. Just the action. There has to be action.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved your topic about book clubs and their importance because I've only ever been in one book club, but when we were in 6th grade, our librarian had a book club and we joined it because we were at a new school for 6th grade and our only friends there were in book clubs. So they were like, you should come and do this with us. And it was still probably one of my favorite things from my school career because it was just so much fun and I got to read a lot of amazing books and I really just loved the people who were in it. It was so fun to get to read a book and then talk to people about it because it's like when you watch a TV show and something crazy happens and you really want to talk to someone about it, so you have to find other people who have watched the show. But I feel like it's harder with books because there's so many and it's not really like there's the 3 big popular books, like there's 3 popular movies or whatever for the year. So I think that it's such a cool idea to be in a book club, even if you just get together with some friends and be like, let's all read this book, then you can talk about it. And I feel like you get a lot more out of it when you are able to share it with other people.
Right. And I think that's the power of it. That's why it has the power to change the world, is that talking to other people. Because you can read a book and get plenty out of it and have a lot of self-reflection and growth on your own, which is what I've done for a lot of my life. It's what my mom, as the voracious reader, has done most of her life. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. Just reading a book by yourself is awesome. But the power to get outside of yourself and to be able to hear someone else's perspective, you can't get that in your own head. Also, books have that chance to give you exposure to things that no longer exist or never existed. Like, you read some sci-fi, you read some Harry Potter, that never existed. The idea of being able to be exposed to something that is outside of your realm of experience is really important.
Mm-hmm. I think what you were talking about how people who read fiction have a broader point of view, I think that you can really expand that by also interacting with other people and talking about what you've read, because then you also get their point of view and that can help you see the book differently and the characters differently. And in the end kind of help you develop, I guess, more of an open mind towards other people's opinions?
I think that's why it's work, right? Like, I'm in 2 book clubs at the moment, and they're the only ones I've ever like formally been in. I didn't join an actual, named book club until I started teaching at Chatfield, because there was a staff book club and I was new, and I thought, well, this is, again, like you guys in 6th grade, this is how I get to know people. But the people in the book club are very much like me. So it's middle-aged white ladies. Like, so it's not a broad perspective from the people who are discussing it. There are different perspectives. We all see things differently, but I think it's work to find a group where you really can get other people's perspectives, which is maybe why, as an English teacher, I feel like my first named book club wasn't till I was 39, but my classrooms are book clubs. Like, English classrooms are book clubs, and there's some forced variety there, depending on, where your school is or what that looks like. But even if there's homogenous races and ages, there's still a variety of opinions that you wouldn't necessarily get from people who are selecting to be in your book club. So it is some work to find one where the analysis of the text is different, which makes it important to make sure that the texts that you choose have variety embedded.
Well, I was curious if you feel like you learn a lot talking about books with your students, because I was in an English class here at USC last semester, and it was really fascinating to talk about the books with the other students because everyone had such varying perspectives, and I felt like I had never really been in a situation before where I was really learning that much from talking about literature with other people, because we would talk about it in high school, but it wasn't necessarily everyone had actually read the books and actually had stuff to say about it. But I think it was really interesting, being in a classroom setting, but still getting to learn so much from each other. So I was curious if that's something that you feel like you get things out of talking with your students.
So comp, which is the senior class, so the students who are slightly more likely to have developed an opinion about topics that would come up in a novel, we don't read novels. We don't read literature. We certainly read issue-based nonfiction, so that's interesting, but it doesn't build. Like, I'm not talking about the same article this year that I talked to you guys about in 2020. Like, that would be silly. So when I do talk about literature, it's with sophomores, and they absolutely give me new ideas and new perspectives, mostly new, words. Like, we're talking about Jay Gatsby, and they're talking about how he's risen up Daisy, and I'm like, okay, that's a new perspective. So I learned the way that they relate it and talk about it is different every year a little bit. So that's interesting. I think I get a lot out of planning for it. Like, what do they need to take away? Like, what are perspectives that they don't have that I want to make sure that they get? Which is tricky, right? Because then I'm grooming or whatever. But, it's things like, hey, we just read about the Great Gatsby, who's, a rich New Yorker, white in the 1920s, has everything he could have wanted, except love, because you can't buy that. But then we turn around and read Their Eyes Were Watching God, which we didn't read when you guys were here. And it is same time period, but from the perspective of a Black woman in poverty. And it's just fun to be able to say, okay, both of these are real American experiences as told by fiction authors, but what's different from what we understand? As much as students' perceptions are informational, so is planning. And I am not the final word. That does take some research for me to go and see, okay, what are some of the themes that are really essential in this novel?
And did you always know that you wanted to be an English teacher, or how did you get on that path?
So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I had one of my first memories, I don't know, I was like 3 or 4. I lined up all my stuffed animals in the living room and got out a little easel and taught them a lesson. So that's one of my first memories. And then in 5th grade, we had to make a poster for what we thought our career was going to be. And mine was kindergarten teacher. So for a long time, I thought I was going to teach little kids. And then my senior year of high school, I worked at a preschool after school. It was awful. I hated it. I lasted until October. It started at the beginning of the year and made it to October. I'm like, oh no, like I am not blowing noses. I am not tying shoes. Nope. And then from there, I had some really influential English teachers through high school, even a few in middle school. I was trying to remember them. And that's how I ended up switching from like, no, not little kids, big kids. And I thought I was going to teach high school when I started my degree path, but I ended up with middle school instead for 17 years. So before I was at Chatfield, I was at middle school for a really, really long time, which was kind of a surprise because it wasn't the rich literature that I really wanted to teach, but there's something about the age group that, called to me for a long time before I switched. And then eventually it was the literature that I'm like, okay, I gotta read, we gotta read some F. Scott Fitzgerald and some Shakespeare. And so eventually I did end up in high school, obviously.
Well, we've talked about before, I don't know how much you seen of us posting on Facebook and stuff, but we have a theater company that we teach kids classes and stuff now. Through that experience, we've talked about a lot that we don't understand how teachers do it because we have the kids for 4 to 6 hours a day for the summer and feel like we're going to die, and teachers have kids for 8 hours every day of the week for 9 months. So what do you feel like is the most, challenging thing about being a teacher, or something you wish people understood about what it's like to be a teacher?
Well, I've never taught the same kids for 4 to 6 hours at a time. So your experience of feeling like you're going to die is probably entirely legitimate. So don't feel bad about that, because I've never had more than 2 hours at a time. And then see ya. Granted, there's a lot of kids that come through the door when you do it that way, as opposed to, elementary teachers where they have 30 for the whole day. I have 120, 30 at a time. I think that there's a lot to it. Everybody has the experience of walking into a classroom. The teacher does the thing. You do the thing with your teacher and your classmates, and then you walk out. That's the tip of a very big iceberg, right? So that's the public part. That's the part that everybody knows and understands, but there's a lot more going on. So, everybody feels like they can weigh in on schools because everyone's been in a school. And you've heard that before. That's not a new concept, but the idea of, okay, I'm really committed personally to making sure that what I put in front of kids is well thought out and engaging. And as much as I'm not an entertainer, I am trying to get through to your brain to help you remember a thing, or even be open to the thing, whatever, a concept, a literary technique, whatever it is. So that planning is my favorite part. I like the delivery. I like the relationships with kids are why I keep going. But my favorite part of the actual career is the planning. What can we do to and there are standards. There's absolutely things that we have to cover, which is, of course, there should be, but the way we deliver them is the joy of it. And it takes a long time. Luckily, if you're doing the same thing multiple, years in a row or semesters in a row, you can revise. But even then, you change things as you go. And then on the other end, there's the evaluation. I got to see, okay, did they get it? Which is really great if that happens in class, but it doesn't always, right? And it's reading and writing. It's not just one or the other. If it were just reading, we could have a conversation. I'd be like, sweet, bye. But there's the, hey, you got to write about what you read now. And writing is hard. You two didn't have any trouble with it. I mean, you did. And just the final the products ended up so, smooth. That's hard. It's hard to get what's in your head out of your head in a way that communicates what you intended to communicate. There's a lot to it.
No, I think that's definitely important, that even for me, even though I've taught theater, which isn't the same as teaching in school, but I know that it takes a lot outside, and then I walk into my classes and I'm just like you said, do the thing, and I don't really think about everything else that the professors have done. And I think that is such an important aspect that people tend to overlook. I also wanted to ask you, because we had you when we were seniors, and I remember a lot of the things that we did in your class I felt like were preparing us for beyond more than other classes. I think our first unit was a college essay writing. Also, we were in Multicultural Alliance with you before we were in your class, and so I feel like I remember you being very influential in my last few years at Chatfield. And I was wondering, especially because you teach so many seniors, if there's like one thing that you really want your students to walk away with when they leave your class, or like the most important thing that you want them to carry with them.
So it does circle back to the TED Talk. I'm trying to find it. I had a couple of kids last semester that in one of their reflections, they really like captured what I was hoping they'd walk away with. They said it and I like almost stood up and did a jig. Okay, here we go. Got it. So this is from a student from this semester. I also learned that there are a lot of different perspectives, no matter what the topic is, and no one opinion will be the same. In order to be completely sure on anything, you have to have all the facts on it before you create your own bias. So back to that idea of being so divided and being so black and white, two choices. You got to hear what the options are. You got to find a second source. You got to find a third source. Like I had a student this semester who found an article saying that dinosaurs weren't real. And it was the only one that he found. Like he didn't go find another one. And he said, this really changed my opinion. And my comment to him was, okay, this would be a really good example of a time where you need a second source to support the first source. And, there's something to be gained from the fallibility of science, sure. But that doesn't mean we say dinosaurs weren't totally real. I think just recognizing and seeking other perspectives before we make up our mind on one. And then our identities get so tied to it. Like what? And I follow a lady on Instagram, which I highly recommend to the two of you. Her name is Sharon Said So. She's got like 1 million followers and she talks about government largely and current stuff. And one of the things that she says frequently, which really resonates with me, is that what we believe, when it gets enmeshed with our identities, then we can't change it. Like we have to dig in. We have to say, this is who I am, so it can't be challenged. But then we get really stuck. Like we have to be willing to hear a different perspective and grow, or you're just going to get we're going to have hatred. We're going to have the us versus them. And that's, I think in comp, I really want kids to be able to find different perspectives and be open to changing their mind. And if they don't, okay, at least you researched and you know why you believe what you believe, not just that you do.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's really important because, I mean, as you said, the world feels very divided right now. And I think that all people in any belief that they have, it can be really easy to hear something and identify with it and then just decide that that's what you believe before you really have all the facts or you listen to other people's perspectives. And then I think, I've done it before. You kind of get afraid to hear other opinions or change your mind because you feel like you've tied yourself so tightly to that one perspective or belief and it feels like you can't change it. And I think that's a big thing that has been talked about lately, is that we need to not be afraid to change our minds and to hear other opinions. And I think that's a really good thing to learn when you're young before you've really developed your opinions, because then it's easier to change them. I think that also goes back to, like you said, what you've talked about in the TED Talk. I think that reading is really the only way that you can see into someone else's life and someone else's mind. Even if it's fiction and it's not a real thing that happened, it's still writing from somebody's perspective. And I don't know, lately I felt like people just misunderstand each other so much and judge people so much. And I think it's just so important to try to see that there's more underneath people than just the opinions that they have seen on TV and they decided are true, or like what's at face value.
What they post on Instagram.
Yeah.
Right. That's the tip of a very big iceberg too. Like you only see a little bit. I feel like one of the things that's getting wrapped up in that divisiveness that I wanted to talk to you guys about was book bans too. Like the idea that people are afraid ultimately of the printed word because it has so much power. And one of the things, so I actually went to a private Christian school, two different ones. We moved states. So I had two different private Christian high school experiences. And one thing I will say for both of those, I even had one before that in middle school. So I went to several different places, is that the teachers that I had in those schools who could have subscribed to that mindset of we have to stay in this bubble, we have to make sure that what we're teaching is aligned with Christianity, they were able to take literature that was relatively controversial and apply it to the people, the kids in their classroom. So I was really impressed. I think even at the time that we read The Great Gatsby, that we were reading Flannery O'Connor, who's was a Catholic, and she wrote some stuff that got her in trouble. My high school teacher, my junior and my senior year, her name is Mrs. Hilder, and we were reading Macbeth out loud in class once, and I have this vivid memory of it because at my previous high school, I had gone to see it. I went on a field trip. I was the only sophomore that got to go see Macbeth with the juniors because I wrote this essay about why I should be able to go. So I was super familiar with, relatively familiar with Macbeth compared to the other kids in my class. So we had this Christian approved textbook that had Lady Macbeth's famous lines where she says, out, out, damn spot. But in the textbook, it's a darn spot. And I was reading that out loud in Mrs. Hilder's class, and I said, damn. I said, damn. And she, like any other time, she would have thrown literally something at me and been like, you don't use that language in this classroom. But she just looked at me and she gave me this little nod, and she knew that I knew. And that's a very small indication of, hey, there's a reason that human experience is represented in these classic pieces of literature. I think we can't be afraid of talking about it, because if your ideas are never challenged, they're not going to be strong. They're going to be wimpy. We're on track. I need to check the numbers for 2023 to see how it turned out. The American Library Association was tracking them. We were on track to have the most book bans in public libraries and public schools in the history of keeping track of it in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. Like thousands and thousands of books, and a lot of them happening like in these big swaths. There were, hundreds of books at a time that lobbying groups were trying to get out of public schools and public libraries because they all fit into a category about race or gender, and it just like removing the whole thing. And then you remove the representation for people who are looking for themselves in novels. People who have that unusual experience don't get to see themselves represented in this lexicon of humanity. And it's just sad. It's just sad. It makes me frustrated that people are trying to eliminate literature that doesn't hurt anyone. And even if it's powerful, sure. But is it harmful? I don't know. I think not.
I mean, you can't hide those things from people. Like, kids are gonna find out about it some way. They're gonna hear things. They're gonna see stuff on TV. And I think that books are a really powerful way for people to really get a new perspective. And I mean, I don't want to say facts, because most books are fiction, so they're not true facts, but I think that getting to learn about something new from a book, or learn about a new perspective or lifestyle that you don't have experience with, I think that a book is a really important way to get that, instead of hearing opinions on TV or something where you're not really exposed to the whole story and you're not getting the humanity of it that you get from a character in a book. And I think that it is really important for kids or people in a public library to have access to all of those things, instead of trying to control the narrative and control what people are exposed to. Yeah, I think that's the thing that is scary to me, is the control. Like, it seems so dangerous to be controlling what people are reading and what people are able to access, because then you're limiting the perspectives that they're getting. So then it creates such an echo chamber of, this is what's right because this is all that I'm hearing and this is all that I'm reading about.
Well, and it's back to that why I still love teaching comp is the bias, right? The confirmation bias is abundant. And it always has been. It's not new. I am reading more nonfiction than I have in the past because of the second book club that I'm in, which is a nationwide online book club. And they only read nonfiction. A lot of it's narrative still, but it's all heavily researched nonfiction. And one of the points that I'm seeing in that group is that this isn't new. Like, historically, people have tried to suppress ideas for a long time. Like, this is the right way or this is the wrong way, or that's why the freedom of speech is so important. But social media just makes it immediate and widespread. So you feel like you're getting the information, a lot of information, and you are, but it's probably information based on your algorithm, right? It's not outside of your norm, because that's not what the advertisers want you to see. So an awareness of that is important too, because it's easy to feel like you're getting all the information because you're getting a lot of information, but it's really not a variety.
Well, I know we've capitalized a lot of your time, so we, I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean?
Okay.
We have 2 questions that we always like to ask our guests at the end. So our first question for you is, do you have a favorite inspirational quote?
Okay, we've talked about, I was thinking about this because I saw it on the list and I figured it was one of those, hey, we want to know. The most honest answer is no. But I really, really like the last line of The Great Gatsby, which is either sad or wonderful, depending on how you interpret it. I don't know if you guys remember. I don't know if I'm going to find it. The internet is vast and full of horrors. Let's see if I can find it. I might just grab the book. Here we go. So John Green and the Anthropocene Reviewed did a podcast about humanity's ability to hope. And he talked about this line at the end. And he thinks it is ultimately a good and beautiful thing, like humanity's ability to hang on to hope. Okay, here it is. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic, of course, future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but it's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Are we gonna make it? Is hope worth it, or is it pointless? I don't know. There's my quote. Sorry that I can't avoid the commentary with it.
No, I love that.
Yeah, I love it.
Can I ask one more question before you? Sure.
Also, do you have a favorite book?
Oh. It changes. Like, I do like the ones that I most recently read. I do love The Great Gatsby, and I remember loving it in high school, and it was one of those books that Mrs. Hilger had us read, and it is racy. So good for her in our Presbyterian high school to be like, we're reading this because it's classic literature, and it's classic for a reason. So I do love that, and kids seem to like it still too. Good job, Fitzgerald, 100 years ago.
Okay, then our last question is, since our podcast is all about being twins, if you could have an identical twin, do you think that you would want one?
So I thought about asking my best friend Stephanie this because she is a twin. She's not identical. They're fraternal. In the end, I didn't get a chance to ask her. I think not, because I think I would be annoyed. I don't know. You two, would you have an identical twin if you had a choice?
I think I would still have a twin, but maybe we would look a little bit different.
I feel like
so we could still be independent a little bit more, but I love having a twin. I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, I wouldn't change it. Like, I don't know what it's like to not have one, but also I feel like there's a lot of things that would be sadder in my life if I didn't have a twin.
Okay, now I feel like I gotta test myself. I'm gonna get it wrong. Okay, one of you has your hair up, one of you has your hair down. Is Aspen the one with her hair down and Ashley the one with her hair up? Or did I switch it?
No, you switched it.
Yes, okay, maybe not identical.
Ashley's supposed to be dyeing her hair, but she hasn't done it yet.
I know. I was supposed to dye my hair blonde over winter break, like just temporary dye, just for fun, but I've been too afraid to commit to it.
It grows. Well, thanks for contacting me and letting me ramble on. It's great to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for making time to talk with us.
Yeah.
It's great to see you again.
Likewise, I can't wait to hear what's next.
We can't either.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, bye, ladies.
Bye.